Now we have a special program for you tonight in response to the coronavirus phenomenon with Eliyahu ben David.
Hello, friends. 2 nights ago, Yahweh wouldn't let me go to sleep. He all of a sudden was flooding my head with things that he wanted me to share. And in fact, I was up all night putting down these thoughts that he was giving me, the things he was showing me. And I've got little sleep in the last couple of days. But this is why we're having this special program in order to share the full message with you. And of course, this is in response to the Wuhan Corona Pandemic that is going on and is really in its early stages right now. We have a lot of people who are confused and in chaos. You may be a believer and still be confused. If that's true, you're not alone. You don't need to be ashamed of it because this is kind of an unprecedented thing, this pandemic that's going around the world. So I'm very grateful that we have a word from our Father in heaven to give us peace and to help us. You know, I've often heard people say, add something worthwhile or shut up. And you know, often I think that's pretty good advice. So I wouldn't be bringing forth this message tonight if I didn't think that we had something fresh and worthwhile that you haven't heard in that storm of information about the coronavirus. You haven't heard this yet. And tonight, you are going to hear something different and something that I think you'll be blessed by. The first thing we need to realize is chaos isn't always what it looks like. Our Creator in heaven has not been caught by surprise by the Wuhan Corona Pandemic. He knew about it long before it ever happened, and he has everything we need to get through this, not only intact, but truly better than we were when we started. His word has clear direction for this situation, and we're going to look at some of that tonight. We're going to get started looking at it. We'll be looking at this more over maybe another week or two, maybe longer, who knows. But in addition to his word, he's also given us a fresh word by his Spirit. And you won't know about this unless we share it with you. And so that's why we're having this special meeting, so you can benefit from this too. There are mysteries of the Spirit to unfold. And these mysteries cannot be understood unless they're revealed by the revealer of secrets. And you know, we've seen this many times as we've studied in the Bible, how our Father in heaven is able to unlock great secrets, even about things in advance of their coming. And what we're sharing with you next is an interview regarding such a dream from above that was given to one of his servants, and then a clear interpretation of the dream will follow, and it will be explained for you, and you can follow along. So to get started, let's have that interview. Friends, this is Sherry, and if you're a regular viewer, you know Sherry. You've seen her before here, and she's a part of our congregation in Greater Austin, Texas. And Sherry has an unusual story to share, and I wanted her to be able to share it with you. And we have a picture that we've created that's you'll see behind us, and we're going to just talk about that picture a little bit too. So Sherry, tell me, how did this all come about?
I had a dream that was very alarming to me. Mm-hmm. And when I was in the dream, I saw around me when I was standing a lot of people that were on the ground and sitting and laying, and there were just many people, many.
Right.
And it was gray, like it was not a happy scene.
Right.
And I looked up and I had a double take. I noticed the moon was a full moon.
Yes.
And on the side of the moon, on the right side of the moon, was a strong green color and large bold letters of NBC in color.
Yeah.
And with everything not looking good, that was like, oh, what are they doing? What are you saying in the moon? And I looked around, and then that was it. I woke up.
Right.
So back to working on this day, Yahweh said, are you going to tell Yahweh what you saw?
Yes.
So I stopped my work and walked to the office and knocked on your door.
Right.
And you said, come on. And I said, yeah, I have to tell you about a dream. And it's about the moon. And you looked at me and you said, come here.
Yes.
Look at my screen. I just make my newsletter and I have a picture of my moon. And you said, okay, tell me about the dream.
Yeah, here's what had happened just before you came. I had been putting together my newsletter and I was selecting images. And I happened to look in Google Images to see what images they had of the moon. Mm-hmm. And I was very surprised to find an image that I had created quite a while ago. But it was my image and it was the best image to use. And I thought, well, this is highly unusual to find this here because, frankly, I usually don't find my stuff in anything having to do with Google. They don't really like to include my stuff. So I was sitting there a little amazed having just found it, and I was about to put it in my newsletter, and then you came and said, well, I just saw a vision having to do with the moon. So that was just too much of a coincidence, right, all at one time. And of course, I listened to you very eagerly about what you saw. So let's just talk about some of these details a little bit. We have the moon, and it's just kind of a pale color.
Yes.
In fact, the whole thing you saw was really just kind of dull in a way, right?
Everything dull, didn't have like color to it.
And the people in our picture are probably even more active than what you saw.
They were sitting, some laying, some slumped over, but there was just many of them.
So the people really weren't active at all?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, and then you have really two things of any color in the entire picture. You have this kind of a halo effect of this green color.
Yes.
And, yeah, and you noticed that?
Yes.
Because it didn't seem to fit, did it?
Well, no, not at all. The moon does not have a color like that at all around it. It's just the moon. And it was on the right side, and it's from the top and around. Like if it was a regular clock, a little after the 12 and about close to the 4, this green, prominent green, and it stood out.
Yes. Wow. Well, that's really interesting. So you had this green that was on just kind of sort of highlighting part of the moon.
Part of the moon.
And then you had these letters, NBC.
The bold print, and they had color, so that I memorized it.
Yes. And I thought that was very amazing. And in fact, the next morning, we did our normal Torah Bible study that we do every Shabbat. And everybody was talking about your dream quite a bit. And there was some very interesting things that came up about that, about these letters, NBC. And we're going to share all of that. Before I get into that, though, is there anything else that you wanted to say about this?
I do. Because after we talked about it, I really didn't have an answer for what those stood for. So I did ask Yahweh, I said, could you, if you please, if you can explain what those letters were. And yeah, I went into Google.
Yes.
Because it's how I was led.
Uh-huh.
And I saw nuclear, biological, chemical. And I said, is that what this would be? And it didn't say anything, but that's what stood out.
I see. And I would just like to say that this wasn't just something that happened between you and I that day.
No.
Because everybody here heard about your dream, and at that Midrash study, we had a discussion surrounding that. And while we did come to understand and simply accepted what those letters stood for, at that point in time, the rest of the dream was still a mystery to us. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that last night, now of course this is pre-recorded from when people are seeing this, but last night when I went to bed, Yahweh brought all this back to my mind and brought forth the explanation about this. Mm. And I sincerely believe this has to do with the coronavirus and Yahweh telling us in advance about it. And he's waited until now to explain it, because it's at a time when this can really be very helpful to people, and I believe can bless those who are able to receive this. And I think this is a good example of what we have studied recently regarding spiritual gifts that were released at Shavuot in the book of Acts, chapter 2. We were talking about those gifts. To have visions and spiritual dreams is one of those spiritual gifts that Yahweh has released for his people. So it's also very timely at this point that we share this with everyone. So thank you very much for being with us today and being so willing to share this. It's going to be very exciting to see how all this plays out as we go along.
Thank you, Elohim. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Sherry once again for being so willing to share this initially and now with all of you. Now, this seems kind of strange to a lot of people. The fact that some people have spiritual dreams and their actual communication from above to tell his people about things that are coming. But really, people who are familiar with the Bible shouldn't be surprised by this, because throughout the Bible, we have examples of people whom our great God in heaven communicated to through dreams. And some of them are stranger than this one, by the way. If you spent any time with that, I'm sure you'll agree that some of those are a lot stranger than this. And the reason for that is because dreams like this are filled with symbols that have certain meanings that have to be revealed by Yahweh for someone to understand. And that requires another gift, which is a gift of the Spirit, and that's the gift of interpretation. And when you have the gift of dreams and the gift of interpretation, and the two come together, then you can have understanding of the message. So yes, this is for real, and the Lord does really speak in dreams today. I also think it's interesting that this all came up just after we have happened to study about Acts chapter 2, where it tells us about the introduction of these spiritual gifts. This seems to happen with our meetings, by the way. Right around the time that we are studying a certain thing, they seem to happen. Now, what happened is Sherry and I talked about her dream. I did the best I could to represent those things in the picture. And while the picture is probably not perfect, Sherry agreed that it was a pretty accurate portrayal. The people are not as languishing as in her dream, and there were more people. So that's one difference. The green was more shining so that she would really see it, and I couldn't really duplicate that. So you just have to imagine that when you look at the picture. Otherwise, so far as I know, the picture accurately represents the dream. It's very interesting in the book of Acts, chapter 2, that it talks about exactly this gift of dreams. And it says that this is something to happen in the last days. Let me read that for you. It says, "It will be in the last days, says Elohim, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Yes, and on my servants and on my handmaidens in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they will prophesy." In the Bible, pestilences are one of the signs in the composite sign of the last days. And as we see here, biblical dreams are also signs of the last days. And so, if you find this dream to be real, this should help to confirm to you that we are living in the last days. And I'm going to share everything that I can about this, and then you can decide for yourself whether you accept this message or not. So you're wondering now, what does this dream have to do with the Wuhan Corona Pandemic? Well, I invite you to listen all the way to the end and see if the one who gave the dream causes it to make sense to you as we unpack what he has revealed. The dream is painting a symbolic picture of then future events. The message is a targeted message. In other words, the dream is directed to people with knowledge and shared experience from Elohim to recognize and grasp the picture that he's painting. So for some people, this will be foolishness, and you find this throughout the Bible, where Yahweh will reveal certain things, and his people will recognize it, understand it, and grasp it. In the book of Daniel, it says the wise will understand, but it says none of the wicked will understand. So that's how these things go. So now let's break down the elements of the dream. Clearly, the central element is the moon. Modern people don't have much to do with the moon. The moon has much more significance in the scriptures. In the Psalm, it tells us he made the moon for appointments. The real purpose of the moon is timekeeping. And in fact, in Hebrew, the same word that we use for the orb we call the moon also means a lunation. That is a month. And a month was even called a moon. As a matter of fact, that has continued on with many peoples, and if you've watched old cowboy movies, I'm sure you've heard the Indians in the movie say many moons ago. So this is a long-standing thing. So simply put, in the Bible, all the months and biblically significant days are set by the moon. So here the moon means months, and this is being used as a symbol to show us an amount of time. You're probably wondering how many months, which months, what's going to be happening during those months. Well, that's all indicated by that partial green glow that you see there. And that will indicate for us the number of months and which months. However, we need to identify some other things first before we get to those details. we need to look at the what before we look at the when. The entire rest of the picture is the what, telling us what this is about. When you look at the picture as a whole, it's telling you something. You're noticing that it's all in shades of black, and that means exactly what you think it means. It's very foreboding. It's a foreboding time. It's a dark time. In the dream, there were large numbers of people languishing with little life to move around. Clearly, those people are not well. Clearly, this does involve sickness, doesn't it? Now, let's look at the only other thing with color, NBC. It's interesting, as soon as I heard this dream, the first thing that came into my head, and at first I thought, well, this must be wrong, is NBC is the National Broadcasting Company, a major TV station in the United States. And I think for most Americans, that's what will come to your head. As quick as that came into my head, I thought, whoa, that's funny. That's too simple. It doesn't mean that. No, it's because it's so simple that it does mean that. It means a major news event is about to happen. But it also has another meaning. It indicates something else besides the fact that a major news event would be happening. As Sherry brought out in our interview, these letters stand for nuclear, biological, chemical. This is a military acronym for nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. You know, the military loves acronyms. That's what NBC means. It also means this: the suits and gear that are worn in the case of nuclear, biological, or chemical attacks. Does this suit look familiar? We've been seeing quite a few of these lately, haven't we? That's what NBC is referring to. Now let's get to the details of timing. We need to consider the context in which the dream was given in order to understand the timing. It's interesting, when this came up, this was quite a long time ago. I had connected it in my head with the wolf moon that we had, I think, over a year ago. That was a wrong connection. And I found that out by looking up the picture that I had found that day. It wasn't in that newsletter that I thought it was, having to do with the wolf moon. It was actually in this newsletter. And this was the newsletter announcing the first day of the 7th month. That's the Hebrew 7th month, not the secular 7th month. And this did occur in September of 2019. In other words, the most recent September is what I'm saying. And this is the picture that I had found on Google Images. So I think that's very interesting, because the fact that Sherry had come to me on that day and I checked her dream against this image, that Yahweh actually set it up so that I found this image, and then literally after that instant, Sherry walked through my door with a dream about the moon. It put those two things together solidly in my brain. And that made it possible for me to find the day by looking up that newsletter, and here it is. This is the newsletter. And this was the newsletter that started out the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar. And the 7th month is the most significant month in terms of appointments in the scriptures. There's a whole number of them, which we observe every time we have a 7th month, making this first day of the seventh month important. And of course, it's all regulated by the moon. In fact, the first day of the seventh month is Yom Teruah. And that is a special day. That is a festival day. Well, we have more about this. As I said, this newsletter is dated September 29th, 2019. So it wasn't as long ago as I had thought, but it still was well before this pandemic began. There were important reasons why it happened at that time and not another time. I think you'll kind of get that from what we're going to look into. But the point is, this dream was absolutely prophetic in the sense of talking about a future event that hadn't happened yet. And I think that's very profound and easy to see here. And the reason I want to underline that is the fact that so many times when something like this happens, people find some excuse to say, well, that isn't really a prophecy. That was more recent, or yada, yada, yada. No, it really was a prophecy, and the newsletter proves it. And so this really was from our Father in heaven. And we want to give him credit for that. This is important to me because I want you to know, in the midst of this pandemic, that your Father loves you, that your Father saw in advance this crisis that's coming. He knew you'd have anxieties about it. He knew that you'd want guidance about it. And he already had a plan for you. And he revealed that plan to one of his servants through a dream. And he's given me the interpretation of the dream in order to share with you. This is him. This isn't me. I didn't wake myself up all night and not sleep. This is him. And his love is real to anybody who will accept it. His love is real, and they will be blessed by it. That's the whole purpose of this dream, friends. This is about his loving you. And of course, you can take it or leave it, right? You don't have to accept his love. But I've found to not accept his love is to do so at your own peril. We're in dangerous ground without him. So the next thing we want to know is, what was this newsletter announcing? Well, not only was it announcing the seventh month, but for that seventh month, we had a special series of messages. And these too involved a revelation by the Spirit. And that newsletter was announcing those special messages that were being delivered that entire month. This is what those messages were about. All of these videos concern the ordering of the tribes of Israel. And we still have all of these videos available at Zion.net if you want to look at these and consider the message. So I'm not going into everything that's in that message tonight. It would lead us too far astray. So if there's some things that I say that you don't fully understand, please bear with me and realize we have a full explanation on the website. It is available to anybody who signs up, and you can look at that material that we have there. But I will get to the central point that's important to us tonight. Now, I'm going to pull all this together when we get to it. So some of it might not look like it's connected to you, but it will. So please bear with me. The central key of these videos was this revelation of the tribes and jewels of the judgment breastplate. Now, as you look at this breastplate of the high priest, if you've ever done any study in this before, it's going to look different to you than what you've heard. And the reason it looks different is because in most cases, the way that the breastplate is laid out is in birth order of the sons of Jacob, who are the fathers of the tribes of Israel. However, That was not the way the tribes were laid out within the nation when the nation was formed in the wilderness. And there's more information that goes into this, showing the proper ordering of the tribes. That's what the revelation was about in that 7th month. And this is the final result of all of that. This is the correct order of the tribes of Israel and the stones. What was this used for? Well, interestingly, the jewels of the breastplate were used by Israel to reveal communication from Yahweh. That was the purpose of the breastplate. So this is a communication device. That's one way of looking at it, a communication device. This is a way in which Yahweh, through this breastplate, communicates information supernaturally, and let me add, not specifically through the written word. Could this revealed breastplate now be the key to unlocking the mystery of the moon NBC dream? Are you seeing the connection so far? Are you seeing why we're zeroing in on this? This is the key to unlocking this dream. It is especially the key to understanding the timing revealed in the dream. And that's an important part of what that dream is about. What we have here is a chart that seeks to illustrate how the biblical months tend to line up with the secular calendar. So how the biblical Hebrew calendar tends to line up with the secular calendar. Now, when I say the biblical Hebrew calendar, I actually mean the same timing as you find in the scriptures. And this is calculated in a different way than the Jewish calendar. So this is not exactly the same as the Jewish calendar. For most people, it's usually close enough, though, that the two would come pretty close. But I'm just giving you full disclosure that those two are not exactly the same. But for the purposes of our discussion, this will work for us because those two things are close enough. Here's the big secret that will unlock all of this. The breastplate tribes, jewels, in their biblical order, as found here on the breastplate, coincide with the 12 months of the biblical Hebrew calendar. So if we put these jewels in order on the biblical Hebrew calendar, then we have information that will help us to unlock the dream. Interestingly, I had this information in the 7th month. I revealed all of this about this order in the 7th month. But I had more. There was just too much to share. One of the things that I had already, but could not really share at that time, I think I even mentioned that at the end to folks, is exactly what I'm talking about here. There's a reason why the tribes coincide with the months. In fact, I think I told you that on this next 7th month coming, that would be now this fall, I was going to reveal that part of the message, and I will be revealing it then. And I'm just telling you that because I want you to know it's not just arbitrary to put these on the months of the year. There's a full explanation for this, but that's going to take us too far from the center of this dream. So this is coming. But anyway, here's the deal. When you put those jewels with their correct months, the Hebrew months, it looks like this. Now, look at the top. In the month of March, you notice there's a red color. That's the first month of the Hebrew year. That's also the stone of the tribe of Judah, the red stone, which is the first of the tribes in the divine order. As you go around from that stone, moving clockwise, the next stone and the next stone and the next stone, that's all the stones, all of the tribes in order, all the way around. The same order as on the breastplate. Now, when you look at this, do you find any green here? Do you notice how there's a green section? Now, it has that red stone in the middle, marking the beginning of the year. But there is a green section that moves partially all the way around the circle of the year. That's the same as the green section on the moon. Now, whether or not it's positioned exactly like the green section in the moon, I couldn't tell you. But this is what that green section on the moon represents. What we could call the green months. These begin, as you can see, sometime in January, and that varies from year to year, and ends sometime in June. And the ending point of that varies from year to year. But it generally tracks about like this. What this is telling us, friends, is that these are the months of the pandemic as it affects our community, because the message is given to us. So we have to see it as affecting our community. And it may be the entire pandemic for everybody. That part I can't tell you for sure, but I think if the length of this pandemic is for these months, for our community, it's either the same for everybody else or everybody else, it might go a little bit longer. And there's a reason for that, and the reason is obedience. You see, whenever Yahweh gives instructions, he expects those instructions to be followed. And as I will share with you, he's given instructions about this. The outcome depends on whether or not people follow his instructions. Now, I have an example for you so you can understand what I'm talking about. When Yahweh brought Israel out of Egypt, his definite plan was that within a few months they would be in the promised land. In fact, he had them right on the border of the promised land and told them to go in. That was his plan. That didn't happen. Not because of him, but because the people did not obey what he said. And so because of that, what he had wanted for the people didn't happen. And instead, it went on for 40 more years. So just because Yahweh tells us something, we cannot ignore the fact that obedience is involved. So what people do is going to make a difference as to the outcome. I know for our community, we're going to obey Yahweh. If we do, this is what the outcome will be for us. But see, I can't speak for the rest of the world, can I? So I'm just wanting to make that clear so that people will understand. So that if there are sections of the world where people are disobedient to his way of dealing with this, you won't be able to turn around and level a charge at him like, you see, he was lying to us or something. No, he wasn't. If people are disobedient, they will have the effects of disobedience come upon them. So let's look at this timing and see if it's worked out so far. Here we have the confirmed coronavirus cases, and you notice these cases went global toward the end of January 20th. They have to go international before something can become a pandemic. So that's the earliest date at which one could think of this as a pandemic. And of course, what we see indicated by these stones and the Hebrew months is that corresponds with January, and this happened in January. So that part has come out correct. Now, our community here, we're located in the United States. And it was on the next day, January 21st, that the CDC reported the first confirmed case of the Wuhan coronavirus in the United States. Notice that's also in January. What does that mean? It means the breastplate is telling us the truth. That's what it means. Judging from how this began, it means that the pandemic will be over for the recipients of the dream sometime in June. Now, it's interesting that tonight, just before I came on, somebody told me there was an announcement that they expected this to be over in August. The government expects it to be over in August. So Yahweh pointed out June. I think the difference is obedience. That's what I think. We've had warfare this year, spiritual warfare. We've had, in various parts of the world, believers have been facing persecution, they've been facing ridicule. We've had other natural disasters of all kinds, earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, all kinds of things, and massive fires throughout Australia. Believers have really needed to be soldiers, and they've needed to have an attitude of being able to accept hardship in order to face these things as good soldiers of Messiah Yeshua, putting him first in these situations. Well, that's the way that we as believers can look at this Wuhan virus pandemic. Are you up for a little live fire exercise? That's what it is. It's a chance for us to improve ourselves in the face of these last days and realize this is only one of several shocks that are going to be coming up through the decade that we've just entered. And this is probably one of the lighter ones. These are going to intensify. The scriptures tell us that these are like the pangs of a pregnant woman. And if you know anything about that, what you know is these pangs of a pregnant woman, the closer she gets to having the baby, the more intense these come. That's the picture. So that's why this is more intense than other things we've experienced. And we have had several shocks over the last couple of decades, right? We had the Twin Towers. This is actually a bigger shock than that, isn't it? All of that stuff. We had the global economic crisis. Here we get a pandemic with an economic effect. So it has increased in intensity. It's going to keep happening, friends. This is not just an anomaly. The next time, it probably won't be a pandemic. It'll be something else that will affect us on a global level. We need to take on the attitude of a soldier. It is not life as normal. And friends, I'm sorry to have to tell you, it never will be again. It never will be again. So this is a great opportunity for us as believers to have the change of mind, the change of attitude, the change of spirit to be ready for the things that are coming, because we can get through this by simply obeying God and doing what He's directing. And other things are going to be harder. So I'm not saying this to discourage you. It's to help you. We can't change the fact that these things are going to happen, friends. They're going to happen. They're in the Bible. The book of Revelation says it this way: these things must happen. So we can't change that. All we can change is ourselves and how we deal with it. Do you understand? Do you understand why I'm talking to you like this? It's not to hurt you. It's not to upset you. It's because this really is a crisis. And you have to take this seriously. And if you're a believer, you have to be more than a believer. You have to be a soldier. And I speak this to you in humility. Because you know what? I don't like it either. I don't like having to change everything I'm comfortable with. I know you don't. But sometimes the times demand things of us. And as believers, we have what we need to do it. We have His Spirit. We have His Word. We have His empowerment. We have knowledge from Him, as is revealed in this dream, that can encourage us and help us through. So, yeah, you've got to be a soldier, but you can do it. And you know what? It feels great when you do it. It feels great to overcome the obstacles in His name. And your neighbors need to see that happen, because they need to see Him. They need to see Him in you because of the things that are coming. You know, it's not just about you and me getting through the things that are coming. What about our neighbors? It's important for them to wake up and come to grips with where we are in the last days. And it's not what we say to them. It's not handing out a tract to them. I'm not saying none of that is not appropriate sometimes. But I'm saying what people really see is what you do. Your spirit that's coming out of you. That's what is going to attract the attention of other people through this crisis and through the ones that are coming, to turn them to the living God. So you have a mission during this pandemic. That's your mission, to change yourself so as to change your neighbors for good. And that'll just happen naturally as you do what Yahweh reveals. This is an attitude that many people have, and it's a foolish attitude. It's an irresponsible attitude. The virus can't do nothing to me. I'm covered by the blood of the Lamb. Are you a believer? Do you have faith? Yes, you are covered by the blood of the Lamb. Does that mean you can't get sick? Do you think it does? What about all these people? Finis Dake, Oral Roberts, Kenneth Hagin, Catherine Coleman, Amy Semple McPherson. What about these people? They all preach this. They all preach that believers can't get sick, that they will be healed from every disease. All of these people died with diseased bodies. That doesn't work that way, friends. Faith doesn't mean you can't get sick or even that you can't die. That's not really what faith is about. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober and self-controlled. You notice that self-controlled? That's really important right now. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Why would a warning like this be in the Scriptures directed toward believers if the devil can't hurt you. The Bible's warning you the devil can devour you. Why is it saying that? Because it is up to you to do things to protect yourself, to be watchful, to be sober, to be self-controlled, which means controlling what you do, actually mentally making decisions about what you should do and acting according to that rather than just according to your feelings. That's what self-control is about, and it needs to be based on the Scriptures. So here's the truth from the Scriptures all those people didn't tell you. Faith does guarantee your eternal life. We are saved by grace through faith. Faith guarantees your eternal life. However, faith does not guarantee that you will live in this life. Let me tell you something. All of the believers you read about in the Bible, they're all dead. They're all dead. All of the heroes of faith in Hebrews chapter 11, they're all dead. Believers die with hope of everlasting life, and that's very real. For this life, what we have is obedience. Obedience safeguards your life in the here and now. A lot of times we don't like obedience. We'd rather just do what we want to do. We even have doctrines about this, right? People telling us that the commandments of God are done away with and we don't need to follow them. This is telling people how to die, friends. This is what Yahweh says in His Word. Behold, I have set before you this day life and good and death and evil. So who gets to choose? It's us, right? God doesn't predetermine that it has to go one way or the other. We have our part too. And this is what He goes on and says. In that I command you this day to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in His ways, and to keep His commandments and His statutes and His ordinances, that you may live. Do you see how living in this life is dependent upon obeying our Heavenly Father? So faith concerns mostly our eternal life, where obedience is what safeguards us in this life. This is why we need so much to totally consume the Word of God. It needs to become so a part of us that it directs us in everything that we do, that we can obey His commandments, and it just comes natural to us to do it. And the reason is for us, not because it's some slavish thing that we hate, but because it is the road to life in this life, friends. This life. It's for us. That's what it's for. And we disobey His commandments at our own peril. That's what He says. Choose life or death. And life means obedience, friends. So here's the Lord's command regarding the authorities who have the authority to deal with this pandemic. Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. Let every soul be in subjection to the higher authorities, for there is no authority except from Elohim. And those who exist are ordained by Elohim. Now this is just like the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, Daniel said to the king of Babylon that Yahweh tears down kings and He raises up kings. He is the one who is ultimately in control of the governments of this world. Not that he approves of them any more than he approved of Nebuchadnezzar. But he does this for the sake of keeping good order in the world for his people. Now, these governments don't always do the right thing. But nevertheless, speaking about times when they are doing the right thing, it says, he who resists the authority withstands the ordinance of Elohim. And those who withstand will receive to themselves judgment. Now, believers don't always like this message. It reminds me of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was given a message to Israel to tell them that Babylon was going to come and destroy their city and carry them away captives, and he wanted them to submit themselves to the king of Babylon. So they threw him in a well and left him to die. That's not what they wanted to hear. Maybe you don't want to hear this message. I can't help that. This is the message. Realize, too, that Joseph and Mary, Messiah himself, the apostles, Paul, and the early believers all complied with Caesar in all matters that did not conflict with Scripture. And I probably don't need to remind you that Caesar was not a nice guy. In fact, he claimed to be God. And he worshiped false gods. Did a lot of stuff that was wrong, okay? A lot of stuff that was wrong. And yet, when he called for the tax, Messiah actually went and got money from the mouth of a fish to pay the tax. It's Yeshua that said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So where Caesar is doing the right thing, we need to follow what Caesar tells us. And, you know, Caesar's not always perfect in the way that he does it. But I will tell you this regarding this coronavirus. In various countries, including the United States, the government administrations in many countries are actually following the central principle the Bible sets out to deal with an infectious epidemic. In the book of Leviticus, which we happen to be studying right now here in our group, it explains all of this. It's the first time ever in human history that we find set out very clearly the use of quarantine for infectious diseases. And there's a whole system there of doing it. Not only that, but it also includes a good deal of material about bathing and washing in order to avoid unclean and infectious situations. All of this to protect the community. And what we're seeing around the world today is that in many countries, those countries are being forced to obey these commandments of the Torah. Is that not an amazing thing? Should not the believers in this world be complying with that? Because how often is it, frankly, that we see the nations obeying the Torah? So if they're going to do it, we need to be supporting them when they are obeying the commandments. Speaking for the government here where I live in the United States, I have been tracking this closely. And I know there's a lot of negativity in the press against the Trump administration. And people, especially who are not here in the United States, may be influenced by that. When you actually look at the facts, what you're finding is that the Trump administration is following the principles that are in the Torah for dealing with this. And if there's any fault that I have with it at all, it's simply that it might not go far enough to follow those principles. But I think that may be coming still. With governments like that who are actually using quarantine, which is from the scriptures, encouraging us to use good hygiene, various washings and bathings and so forth, isolation because of infection. All of these things are in the book of Leviticus. We're studying it right now. You can listen to it on a radio station. And that's what they're doing. So how can we, being believers, not cooperate with that? So if you want to know the specifics of the plan for the public health here in the United States, you need to see what the administration is urging and then do it, obey it. And I have the link for you here. It's at coronavirus.gov. Read it, do it, and be blessed, because that's the course that Yahweh is setting out in order to protect people through this pandemic. Now, some of you might be saying, yeah, but what about this? Some countries are doing a thing called herd immunity. Herd immunity is the opposite to what the scriptures tell you to do. The scriptures tell you to love your neighbor. Herd immunity means let the virus run through the community. And it may kill off some people, but the ones who are left will survive the next virus that comes through. That is sorely lacking in the love of God and the love of neighbor. So if you happen to live in a country that is following a policy of herd immunity, you don't need to oppose them. What you need to do is find a country that has a program that is in harmony with the scriptural advice. Look up what they say and follow that. I know that the policy here in America is basically good, except it may not be severe. Now, when I say that, one of the things I mean is closing schools. That's within the realm of what the scriptures would talk about in a situation like this, okay, closing schools. Here in America, this is left up to the states and the cities. So, some of them do it and some of them don't. There's practical reasons why they're reluctant to close the schools. But that's really the place where this virus gets transferred on a mass scale, places like school. Regarding that exception, I would just say to folks, if you can keep your kids home from school, do it, please. Because your kids, if they get the coronavirus, there's a very little chance that they will die from it. But depending on your age, it's much more likely that you will die or their grandparents will die. Figures show, and I think these figures are not actually accurate because they don't include everybody, but the figures we have show that 18% of the seniors that contract the virus die by the virus. Now that's huge. That's like putting a bullet in a gun, spinning the cylinder, and putting it to your head. Those are not good odds, friends. And the way that many of these older people are going to get the virus and die is through the younger people in their life. So you younger folks, you have to think about this. It may be that this is no big deal to you. You could get this virus and not even have symptoms, because when you're young, you have these amazing immune systems that kill stuff like this. Or you might have very mild symptoms and think you just have a cold or something. This is a very deceptive thing, and it's very dangerous to older people. So that's why I have this line here, herd immunity or culling the herd. Effectively what herd immunity does is it culls out all of the old people and the sick people. That's not love of neighbor. That's diabolical, actually. Now, some people might actually be fooled into believing this is scientific, and that might be why they're doing it. In other words, they might not be of bad motive in some countries where they're doing this, even though it's a bad policy. But in some places, it could be something else. It could actually be sinister. The purpose could really be to kill certain people. Because, think about it, most of the people who believe in traditional values, including biblical values, are the older people. It can totally tip the scales for those people who are against those values, politically speaking. And so there is a motive involved where this herd immunity could actually be a method of culling the herd. We don't want to fall into that. Keep that in mind about our older people, about those who are compromised in some way in their health. We have to change doing what we usually do. You know, one thing I've seen about God's people, wherever they are, is they're very loving people. Many of us really like to hug. We like to get close. We just like being together. And during this, we have to change how we think. We have to change what we do. Just for the duration of this, regarding these matters. You know, our Father in heaven, He wants us to be close. He wants us to love one another. And during this, though, He wants us to self-isolate when we need to. It's called being set apart, friends, in the book of Leviticus. Set yourself apart. That's what it's called. It's for the good of the community. You don't always need to do that, but you have to have these principles in mind. This is not too long. We're already through a good part of this. We're in March already. So we're looking at something in the range of 3 to 4 months from this point forward. It is true that this will restrict our personal freedom for a few months, but, you know, being able to have some idea of the end of this thing, it's not impossible, is it? We can do it. And realize this is training for us, for bigger shocks that will definitely be happening through this decade. And so this gives us a chance to learn the lessons from this, because we're going to need those lessons. I do want you to know that this message tonight is just the beginning for right now. And it's enough to meet the immediate challenge. You know, the big thing right now is understanding that our Father in heaven fully knows about this. He loves us. He's with us. And if we just obey Him, we're going to get through it. The last thing I wanted to tell you about is that next week, we're going to have another unique interview that's going to give you more about what we need to know right now. Actual examples of things that have happened with this coronavirus and how Yahweh would lead us through that. So please come back during the same time slot next week for that message. And in the meantime, feel free to come and look around the website at some of the things we mentioned tonight, and anything else is there. There's a lot there that's absolutely free for you that can help to build you up and direct your way through these days.